Who could ever resist watching a relaxing wilderness build before bed? It's the perfect nighttime therapy building in the snow, pure and soothing. For insomniacs, he's a real savior. Watch till the end and you'll fall asleep smiling. So grab your phone battery around 70% and find the most comfortable position to lie down. Let's enjoy this calm, snowy day building journey together. Meet Ake, a single man in his 30s, still unmarried. Suffering from severe social anxiety, he chose to escape the noisy world during winter, leaving behind the comfort of his heated room to live alone in the snowy wilderness, undisturbed. After trekking for dozens of kilometers, Ake arrived at an open patch between frosted pines. The view was wide, peaceful, and bright. Even better, the ground was littered with dry logs, saving him hours of searching for building material. Without hesitation, Ake checked his tools and began gathering and trimming the frozen wood. But before starting the main project, he decided to build a small temporary camp. That way, he'd have a cozy spot to rest when tired. He split thick logs into wooden planks and nailed them together on short stumps. Soon, a handmade table stood proudly in the snow. Following the same idea, he crafted a matching chair to go with it. He sat down to test it out and it felt surprisingly sturdy. Only one problem, the blazing sun above the snow. So, using a strong branch, he tied a rope to suspend it above his head. Then, he hung up a waterproof tarp, creating the perfect shade and snow shelter combo. Even if a snowstorm hit, he'd stay dry and warm. After resting briefly inside his camp, Ake began outlining the base of his snow cabin with string. From the markings on the ground, it was clear the house wouldn't be small, which also meant more work ahead. The bigger the dream, the heavier the labor. Luckily, the forest soil was soft and sandy, making it easier to dig into the frozen ground. Still, long hours of bending and lifting nearly made him give up several times. But with some tomatoes and cucumbers as comfort food, Ake somehow managed to push through alone. After 2.5 days of non-stop work, he finally dug 7 holes deep enough for the foundation. Next up, collecting all the wood needed for construction. With so much dry timber scattered around, and the help of his chainsaw, Ake could easily cut the logs to the perfect lengths he wanted. The first batch of wood was soon ready. Considering he planned to build a half-buried snow shelter and the cabin itself wouldn't be small, he decided to boost efficiency by first assembling the wooden frame on the ground. That way, later, he could move it directly into the snow pit for setup. To make every log fit perfectly, he carved neat grooves at both ends. Even without nails, the logs locked firmly in place, no sliding, no shifting. Then, he repeated the process, layer by layer, raising the wall frame higher. It wasn't too physically demanding, actually, and stacking each layer gave Ake a satisfying sense of achievement. When the wall reached half his height, he marked each log with numbers and letters for easy assembly later. That way, no mistakes would happen during setup. And since the ground inside the snow pit was damp, he carbonized the bottom logs, making them waterproof and rot-resistant. Thanks to carbon's stable chemical nature, the treated logs could now withstand years of harsh weather. Once every log was properly carbonized, he carefully laid them one by one into the snow pit. After that task was done, Ake felt the heat building under his coat. Luckily, not far away flowed a narrow, icy stream. He splashed the cold water over himself to wash away the fatigue. Once refreshed, he disassembled the wall frames one by one and laid them neatly along the sides of the pit, making it easier to move them later. Everything was progressing steadily, just as Ake had planned. To make sure it was secure, he hammered long nails through the pointed ends of each log. Then he took out a roll of waterproof cloth and placed it between the wall and the snowy soil to block out ground moisture. He also stuffed moss between the gaps of the logs to fill the cracks tight and firm. That way, the cabin would stay warm and insulated. Every step Ake did it with his own hands. There was no turning back once he began. The hardship of this journey only he and you, the viewer, could truly feel it. At this moment, Ake probably wished for someone to lend a hand even just for company. Fortunately, all the logs had been pre-cut and shaped, so assembling the cabin walls went smoothly, but the next part was far too heavy for one person alone, so Ake called his cousin for help. To move in and out of the snow pit easily, they had to build the main entrance first. Ake fixed wooden planks at the spot where the door would be, then picked up his electric saw and carved out the center panel. That became the cabin's doorway. Knowing the snow might melt and refreeze, the two decided to build a small entry stair. The soil beneath was loose and could collapse easily, so they first installed support posts on both sides, then wedged short logs between them as retaining walls. Once that was done, it was already time for lunch. Ake had only brought along some canned vegetables, simple but filling, yet having his cousin by his side made it feel like a feast. After eating, they went right back to work. With earlier experience in mind, they repeated the same method. Working in perfect rhythm together, they finished the entrance stairs in just 1 hour. The job was a success, and Ake couldn't hide his satisfaction. His snow cabin was finally nearing completion. He took down the camp tarp and decided to give himself a short break, a well-earned rest. When Ake returned a few days later, he brought back a pile of timber from the nearby town, planning to use it for the cabin roof. The forest air was damp after the recent snow. So Ake lit a bonfire first to keep warm and dry, then he raised the wall higher to support the coming roof structure. The top beams of the wall needed special grooves carved into them, a must for withstanding wind and snow. He also padded the upper frame with a thick layer of moss for insulation. Once set in place, it became a solid, windproof wall. For the roof, Ake chose a human-shaped framework, shorter logs nailed higher and higher toward the peak. Once the isosceles-shaped frame took form, he placed a long central beam across the top, as the ridge beam. Then he sawed off the excess on both sides. Now the roof formed a stable triangular frame. Even under heavy snowfall in the future, its load-bearing strength would hold. Before fastening the roof planks for good, the meticulous Ake stapled a layer of insulation underneath, again to reduce gaps and stop winter drafts from leaking in. With the prep complete, he fixed the roof boards one by one into place. After the entire roof was boarded, he trimmed the extra edges smooth with his saw. Next, he pulled out the waterproof membrane and fastened it tight with a stapler, sealing the roof against melt and snow. When that job was done, Ake saw no light leaking into the cabin, which meant the interior was fully sealed. Come blizzard or gale, the inside would still feel like spring. Ake was thoroughly pleased. He packed up his tools, ready to finish the rest tomorrow. When the first snow of winter fell over the Siberian forest, Ake reappeared in our sight. After an hour trekking through fresh powder, he finally reached the half-finished cabin, his new home. Good thing he'd waterproofed the roof before leaving. The interior was bone dry. Even the moss he'd used to stuff the wall gaps was still dry and springy. To move in before deep winter hit, Ake had to speed up the remaining work. Step 1, lay the floorboards. As for the planks he needed, Ake didn't buy them pre-cut. He found a long, straight round log instead, nailed on right-angle guides, then used his saw to slice it into boards. It took extra time, sure, but it saved a lot of money, and the boards turned out beautifully. With several boards milled, he fixed them onto the sleeper joists. Using the same method, Ake cut a few more planks, but these boards he wouldn't lay on the floor just yet. The wind and snow showed no sign of stopping, so he decided to use them to extend the eaves above the doorway. That would keep blowing snow from drifting inside and stop the entry steps from getting buried. When done, he relayed the waterproof membrane, extending the eaves by over a meter. Now, no matter how fierce the storm, Ake wouldn't have to worry. But the cold was relentless. He had to stop often to light a fire and warm up, so the flooring wasn't even halfway done. In the end, he packed his gear and headed back to his hometown for a proper rest. When he returned again, the forest snow had finally melted. He brought plenty of new supplies, most importantly, a fireplace. No one forgets the bite of winter cold. So the first task back was to install the stove. Ake marked the wall carefully, then cut a vent opening with his saw. Because the cabin was wooden, he lined the area around it with red bricks as a fireproof barrier. That fireproof ring would keep high heat from scorching the wall. Next, he installed the chimney and locked it in. Careful as ever, Ake sealed the edges with concrete, so cold winds couldn't whistle through any gaps and invade the shelter. Only then did he notice a slip he'd forgotten the heat shield plate. No big deal, easily fixed later. Once the exterior flue sections were stacked and secured, Ake swiftly split a pile of dry kindling, then lit the fireplace. Warmth began to flood the room. As the fire roared, plumes of smoke rose, and with them came a cozy, lived-in feel to the cabin. Soon the heat made Ake a little flushed, so he went back to milling more uniform boards, then fixed them onto the sleepers. With the room warm and snug, work felt far more comfortable, and Ake's pace picked up. In just one afternoon, the flooring was nearly finished. Though the workload wasn't heavy today, Ake decided to head back early and rest. Soon, the Siberian forest was blanketed white once more, and Ake's snowmobile finally earned its keep. With that handy transport, everything became much easier. After just half an hour riding, he arrived at the shelter. The doorway was buried in snow, but thankfully the inside was untouched. First thing on return, get the fireplace roaring again, so the room would heat up fast. Soon, the rising smoke made the log house feel like home all over again. To make coming and going easier, Ake shoveled the drifted snow from the entry, clearing it clean so slush wouldn't be tracked in and muddy the floor. Ever observant, he noticed a hint of icing on the wall corner logs. So he decided to finish the doorway first. He leveled the threshold with an axe, then realized the door opening was too low. He had to stoop every time he entered. Out came the chainsaw to remove 2 upper rounds, and the height felt just right. Next on the list, build the door frame. Ake marked clean lines on the log faces, then cut grooves inside with the saw. He measured the doorway carefully and built a frame to match. Meticulous as always, he lined it with a layer of insulation, reducing gaps as much as possible to fend off the night's icy drafts. Finally, he drove long nails to lock it in place. The door itself was simple work. After finishing the panel, Ake hung it to the frame with hinges, and the cabin's doorway was complete. Outside, black night and swirling snow inside, a sealed room and steady heat from the stove. Chances were, Ake would sleep well tonight. Morning came in a blink. In this world of ice and snow, everything felt calm and serene. At first light, Ake rode his snowmobile out to find logs for milling boards. Many were buried under thick snow, but a careful eye could still spot them. He racked a log in place and prepared to use the old method guides and saw to slice it into planks. Then he sliced those beams into smooth, even planks. By now, this whole process was second nature to Ake. Each cut produced finer, cleaner boards than before. With his snowmobile to help, he hauled the boards back with ease. The first thing he did at home was stack dry firewood, then light the fireplace. In that cozy warmth, he began fastening the planks one by one. Once the flooring was complete, darkness had already fallen outside. With no bed to stay on, Ake had no choice but to ride his snowmobile home through the night. By late December in Siberia, deep winter had arrived. It felt like only yesterday when Ake first began building his forest shelter in midsummer. Time had passed faster than he imagined. The narrow path to the cabin was now buried beneath a thick blanket of snow. After about an hour's ride, he finally arrived safely at his hand-built refuge. The snow reached nearly to his knees, but thankfully, the 1-meter roof extension he'd added earlier had kept the entrance ladder from being buried. With a mix of hope and worry, he opened the door. After months without anyone inside, frost crystals coated the wooden walls, sparkling and clear, as dreamy as a frozen night sky. But first things first, he grabbed some dry firewood and lit the fireplace. Warm air began to chase out the chill. Rising smoke from the fire filled the cabin with homely comfort. After securing the final floorboard, the cabin's interior looked neat and complete. This time, Ake had also brought back small windows from town to solve the lighting problem. For placement, he chose the center of the front wall above the door. Since the cabin faced south, the sunlight would spread evenly inside. After cutting the wall opening, he fitted the window snugly into place. Then, using the same technique, he added another window to the back wall. Now, with both north and south openings, when opened together, fresh air could flow freely through the cabin. Once that was done, Ake brought in several square beams to build himself a single bed. When mounting the sideboards to the wall, he used a level to ensure perfect alignment. After fixing the frame, he nailed down the boards for the bed surface. The rough surface of the planks was smoothed down with a sander, and just like that, a flat, comfortable single bed was complete. By now, night had quietly fallen once again. Ake finally laid down his tired body and drifted into a peaceful sleep beside the warm fire. The next morning, the windows were frosted thick with ice crystals. Ake quickly stacked more firewood and relit the cozy fireplace. Outside, the temperature had dropped to 30 degrees Celsius, but inside, it stayed a warm 20 degrees above. He poured himself a steaming cup of tea, and warmth slowly returned to his body. Once refreshed, Ake used the leftover wood to craft a tabletop. He attached it to the wall with sturdy hinges, then fixed the legs underneath. Soon, a foldable dining table took shape, fold down when needed, fold up when not, saving precious space inside the cabin. He polished the surface carefully with a grinder, making it smooth and pleasant to the touch. Finally, he swept away all the sawdust. Winter days were painfully short. Ake hurried to chop more firewood for later use, then returned to his warm little cabin to prepare tonight's dinner. He sprinkled chili powder over a piece of meat to marinate, then heated oil in the pan and laid the meat down to fry. After a short sizzle, the air filled with the rich aroma of a crispy golden steak. Outside, the world was frozen below 30 degrees Celsius, but Ake sat safe in his handmade log cabin, enjoying a meal he'd crafted himself. Life didn't get much better than this. After a satisfying meal, he tidied up the cabin once more, locked the door, and planned a trip home to buy new supplies. When he returned later, the Siberian forest was as beautiful as ever. Snow-covered pines glistened in the light. His little woodland cabin stood quietly, blanketed by last night's heavy snow. Now the cabin looked like a baby cradled in white. Wrapped in snow, it radiated the warmth of home. That sense of peace and belonging was indescribable. After lighting the fireplace, Ake shoveled the snow from his doorway so it wouldn't spill inside. Once everything was clear, the entry stayed dry and tidy. In this bitter winter, firewood was a lifeline. Whenever he had time, Ake split more logs, stockpiling them high for security. Only when the pile was large enough did he feel truly at ease. After finishing his daily chores, Ake returned indoors content. He used a torch to carbonize the tabletop, making it tougher and more resistant to age, while giving it a rustic charm. It added an artistic touch to the cabin. Still, Ake wasn't quite satisfied. He noticed an empty space at the end of his bed. Measuring carefully with a ruler, he decided to build a small half bed there, a simple seat for daily use. Braving the cold outside, he began sawing square beams into planks, and once he had enough material, he returned indoors to assemble the frame from the beams, then laid the boards neatly on top. To save space, he made it foldable again, adding a hook to secure it. And so, a compact foldable bed was complete. Now, even if a guest ever came to stay, there'd be space. It didn't block the door, and one person could lie comfortably upon it. He gave the cabin one last cleaning. Life in the snowy wilderness had never felt this peaceful. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell so you won't miss the next forest house building videos. Finally, share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.